but I could be mistaken about that. I'll have to use my binoculars and hold the camera steady at the same time. But I can walk and chew gum, folks. Don't worry. Yeah, that bear's a little too... I can't quite tell who it might be, but definitely seems to most often or most closely resemble 151 down there, but I could be mistaken about that, so don't take it as 100% truthful. And bears will fish the riffles. Sometimes we'll see these bears in that location charging through the water, chasing salmon. When the salmon are really abundant, the bears can afford to sit there and just kind of be more patient with it. Through the water. Number 409 with yet another fish. Not unsurprising. Ever tried to fillet a salmon, you know that you need a pretty sharp knife to do it. So again, another demonstration of strength. She can just bite into that and easily tear it off. You're looking at this bear. Not only is her fishing style on the lip a little distinctive, you know, with that raised paw that she likes to hold in the air. Identifying her physically is also fairly easy. Very blonde. Large fluffy ears. You can see that salmon there still moving, still struggling. And this is definitely a classic example of high grading. Stripping the skin off. Now she's moving to the head. That might have been finally the killing bite after all of that. Again, 409 really taking her time with that salmon. Definitely demonstrating that she is full this evening. Doesn't need the whole fish. Doesn't need to waste stomach space on less caloric parts like the salmon flesh. Sometimes you'll see bears strip the skin off so skillfully that it looks like a nice fillet floating downstream, like you would almost pick it up and put it on your grill. Just as a matter of full disclosure, I have never done that. Other bears here are eating their fish. Number 755 kind of in the middle there downstream of the rocks. Turning away from us, he has a salmon. .409 drop most of that fish down into the water below. There is again a smaller bear here, and I'm not sure if it's going to be able to see that and pick it up. It may have been swept downstream out of its line of sight. And there it is right now. You can see that it finally caught sight of it. So younger bears, you know, if they're able to hover around the fringes of the waterfall, can make a living just by looking for those leftovers on very abundant days like today. So sometimes you'll see young bears, especially smaller bears, at Brooks River not catching a lot of fish on their own at this time of the year because the best fishing spots are dominated by larger bears that they can't compete with. But on days like today when the river is really flooded with salmon, it's easy for them to make a living. You can see that there are fewer fish jumping right now compared to the beginning of the broadcast. The salmon do move in the river, through the river in waves. It's not uncommon when I'm up here to, start counting fish. When I visit the falls in the evening, and I might see just a few salmon jumping, or I may see a lot of salmon jumping. But by the end of my stay over several hours, I might see the opposite, where if there were a ton of salmon jumping, maybe dozens per minute or more, then 3 hours later there might be just one or two fish. And the catch rate for these bears right now is definitely going down. So if you are a bear, again, you got to be opportunistic and you got to take advantage of those situations when they present themselves. I can't really imagine the profound hunger that they feel. Living a life where you have to eat a year's worth of food in 6 months or less, it's just not something that I think humans can conceive or feel in the same way that brown bears do. In the fall, the switch that tells them that they're full gets turned off, so they really never feel full in the fall, and that's a stage in their annual life called hyperphagia. They're not quite at that now, even though they are gorging on salmon. But we'll see that in September and October. Bears sitting in the jacuzzi and standing on the lip, though, do decrease the success rate of salmon jumping. Not only the number of fish jumping, but the actual successful leaps themselves. So a lot fewer salmon will jump the fall successfully when bears are in these positions. 409 standing right in a spot where a lot of salmon will make the leap. They'll hit the water right there. So that's why she's standing there, because she can reach down with her mouth and grab them. But that blocks one of their avenues upriver. There's another spot just on the opposite side of her where salmon can hit the water and keep going. But very few other places. And take a look at this adult female down here. This again might be number 39, I am not sure. Number 39 has had 2 litters. Fairly blonde, ears. A lot of bear that I see at Brooks Falls very often. Bears use the river in different ways. Some of them are skilled at fishing downstream. A lot of the big adult males love to fish up at Brooks Falls just because it's such a productive area, and it would be so for all bears. But when in the bears world, it's pretty much an all-for-one world outside of the bond between a mother and cubs. So bears don't give each other any breaks, and they're not if when they're hungry, they're not going to allow other